Hello everybody, and welcome to my series on how to play with and understand GregTech. In this first episode, I'll be talking about some of the major changes GregTech introduces and how to deal with them. So, the first change you'll probably notice is that ore generation is completely changed. Instead of the regular small veins you see scattered throughout the world in vanilla Minecraft, GregTech adds two types of veins to your regular world. The first type is gigantic underground veins consisting of several chunks that spawn a couple different ores at once, and these small individual ores that spawn one at a time and spawn independently of these larger veins. Now, in addition to these basic materials that you're used to, like iron, copper, tin, diamonds, there'll also be these ores that consist of multiple materials. Galena, for example, has been around for a while in GregTech and consists of silver and lead, as well as sulfur. Cassiterite is one type of tin ore, garnierite is one type of nickel ore, and pitchblende gives you uranium, as well as a few other materials. Now, there are many others, not just these, that spawn by default in GregTech, but there are many ores and mod adds that do not spawn by default. You can enable them in the config if you wish. Some examples include ores added by other mods like Vintium from Ars Magica, Dash from Galacticraft, and Nikolite from Red Power. And then there are other miscellaneous ores that aren't mod specific like Saltpeter that could come in useful but don't spawn by default. And in addition, there are ores that also exist but aren't enabled by default that are pure metal ores such as titanium or antimony that give you just the one metal instead of several metals at once as these ores do. Now, moving on from ores, GregTech is notorious for changing a lot of recipes, both vanilla and from other mods. It changes some tool recipes, but you'll notice that the wood, stone, and diamond recipes are actually exactly the same as they were before. What's changed is actually the metal recipes. You can see that the recipe is a lot more complex. You now need iron plates, a hammer, and a file to craft your tools. Now, the hammer and file are used for crafting pretty much every tool that's introduced in vanilla Minecraft. Other tools that are introduced by GregTech may use other crafting material, or crafting tools, I should say, but the hammer and file are the standard ones. Now, you might not want to use the vanilla tools because they're pretty limited. I mean, you can only make 5 different varieties, and they're not that good. So, you'll want to craft these GregTech axes. Now, these have a considerably simpler crafting recipe. It's just a tool head and a tool rod. A tool head can be made out of any material added by vanilla Minecraft or GregTech, and the tool rod depends on the tool head material. Usually it's just a regular wooden stick. Sometimes it can be steel or tungsten steel, or if it's a magic tool head and if Thaumcraft is installed, then it'll be a thaumium rod. Otherwise, it'll be a stick. Now, to craft the tool head, it's exactly the same recipe as a vanilla tool, you just don't include the sticks. And tool heads exist for every tool added by GregTech, and this isn't the only way to craft them. This is the, I guess, early mid-game way of crafting them in a crafting table. You can actually also craft them using an extruder. So this is a medium voltage machine, so you'll have to get quite a bit into the medium voltage era before you use it, but you basically take a tool head mold and the appropriate number of materials, put them in together, and it gives you the tool head. This is a faster, more streamlined way of doing things. Now, you can use the tool head on its own as a tool. You do have to craft it as a rod in order for it to actually function the way you want it to. And other than tools, it changes a couple of other recipes. One of the first you might notice is a bucket. It actually takes plates to craft, and as well as a hammer. Armor is similar in that it takes plates and a hammer to craft. So regular iron armor looks like this. Diamond armor, same with tools, is kept as a default recipe. You don't need plates or a hammer. Now, one thing that people get confused about is that flint and steel requires flint and steel. So how do you make that? Well, it's actually a lot easier than you might think. Steel spawns in a lot of different chests like villages and dungeons and mine shafts, so it's pretty easy to find. You can also make it using a bronze blast furnace, which takes a bit longer, but it's a more reliable way of getting it. I'll talk about that later. Now it changes a couple of other mod recipes. Of course, industrial craft, it is an industrial craft add-on, so you'd expect it to change some recipes. The diamond drill, for example, takes titanium. The regular drill takes stainless steel, so that's a bit different. Actually, while I'm here, the regular RE battery isn't made the way you're used to it. It's actually made in a fluid canning machine with molten redstone and battery hull. The quarry recipe from BuildCraft, if you have BuildCraft installed, is also changed. It takes a diamond drill instead of a diamond pickaxe, and it also takes steel gears and an advanced circuit. I noticed while setting this up that some railcraft recipes are changed as well. So that's an iron gear up there, and it takes plates, a file, and a hammer. Now, the forge hammer is a tool added by industrial craft, and it's normally used to craft plates. However, the forge hammer itself does not have a recipe if you have GregTech installed, and this is because it is used to craft one ingot into one plate. The way you make plates using GregTech recipes is with 2 ingots until you get a machine that can do it automatically. So the forge hammer you can forget about because it doesn't exist. And finally, this isn't really a change, it's just a certain way GregTech does things, and it's regarding crafting alloys of metals. So some other mods, forestry comes to mind, craft, for example, bronze using just copper and tin in this shape, tin ingots. But GregTech allows you to either do it using dusts or using an alloy smelter. Now, dusts, you don't need a machine to do it. You can actually make dusts using a mortar and then just craft it together and then smelt the bronze dust you get. But you only get 3 dusts instead of 4. So if you want the full output, you should use an alloy smelter, which you can actually make pretty early on in the Bronze Age. And that can take dusts or ingots as an input and will give you 4 bronze ingots as an output. Now, not all alloys can be made in the alloy smelter. If an alloy takes more than 2 metals, then you have to craft it as a dust, and you'll get the full output if that's the case, because there's no other way to craft it. Also, even if an alloy takes just 2 materials to craft, such as nichrome, for example, it only takes nickel and chrome, but you cannot craft it in an alloy smelter. You have to craft it by hand, and this is because nichrome needs a blast furnace to be converted into an ingot. So materials like that also cannot be crafted in an alloy smelter, but things like bronze and brass can. You can use NEI to check that. One last thing is regarding the axes in GregTech. So there is a so-called timber functionality. This can be enabled or disabled in the config, and it works basically how the lumber axe from Tinker's Construct and similar mechanics work. So if I just chop the bottom log, the whole tree comes down. I believe it only chops vertically, so if this was a bigger tree with branches, it would not cut down the whole tree. It would just cut down the main trunk. It does not work with vanilla axes or any other axes added by other mods. Only works with these GregTech axes. One last thing I want to mention is regarding GregTech and the use of not enough items. So normally not enough items is great for telling you how to use things in addition to how to make things. But the thing with GregTech is that every single material exists in a bunch of different forms. So you have the dust, you have the ingot, you have stacked ingots, you have plates, you have screws, foils, springs, you have a bunch of different stuff. And it takes forever to look at the uses for every single one of these different items because everything can be converted back into a base form. So like wire becomes tiny dust or a nugget. A plate can be smelted back into dust or ingots. So you're going to be wasting your time if you look at the uses for every single one of these items. So save yourself some time, and instead of looking at what something is used for, just don't think about it until you actually have a use for it, and then you'll realize what you needed to use it for. So, if the time comes to make a nichrome coil block, you'll realize, oh, well, I need nichrome for this, so I should probably get around to making that. But that's about it for this first episode. The next one, I'll talk about the ore generation in GregTech and go into more detail about that. If you have any feedback or any suggestions, requests, please leave them in the comments. This is my first attempt at doing anything on YouTube, so I hope all goes well, and I hope the video looks good, and I'll see you next time.